call the roll.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Cooney.
Present.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Here.
Commissioner Sykes.
Here.
Commissioner Urban.
Here.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Here.
Mayor Hopewell.
Is there a motion to excuse Mayor Hopewell?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cunningham, supported by Commissioner Sykes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. For our opening ceremony, we will have an invocation given by Reverend Nathan Dannison, First Congregational Church. I ask that you stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, Commissioners. On behalf of my church, I want to thank you for your ongoing support in our precarious situation. As many of you know, a member of our Kalamazoo community, Sahida Nadeem, has requested sanctuary from the federal authorities, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. One of the newest branches of the federal government, ICE, is 15 years old, and over the course of its life has made it a huge mess of things in many of our municipalities around the country. Zahida is a very giving member of our community. We are honored and proud to support her, protect her, and defend her against these outside forces. As such, though, tonight I ask that our prayer would be one of sanctuary for all of those in our community who do not receive such support and who are tonight waiting for a rescuer in this Easter season. Let's go ahead and pray. Gracious and almighty God, so many of us believe that you came to this earth as an infant, a person who was poor, a person who was marginalized. And yet many of us go through our daily lives ignoring those who would model you and who would reflect your face. We ask that you would turn our hearts now to those members of our city who are waiting on justice, who are waiting on a just judge to hear their case. Enable these people to do their jobs with wisdom and with mercy. Remind them, Lord, in their hearts that they were chosen by us. They were selected out of our midst to be our voices. And so give them courage to speak their conscience as they see fit. And Holy One, as winter turns to spring, remind us of the hope that is in the future for all of us, not just those of us who have means, not just those of us who are privileged to have access in this society, but all of us share together a future of hope and promise. This we ask through all of your many holy names. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So fast. Well, I don't like to put the comment in there.
Okay, tonight I'm excited to announce we have two proclamations. The first proclamation is for Child Abuse Prevention Month. Commissioner Cunningham will offer the proclamation, and I'm going to make my way to the podium. Is Sarah Yoshi and Jennifer Pomeray from the Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Council here? Great.
So I have the distinct honor, and give me a moment here to my colleagues to say a few words and actually allow me to remove my Kalamazoo City Commissioner hat. And let me put on my State of Michigan hat, as I am a executive board member for the Kalamazoo Child Abuse and Neglect on behalf of the state of Michigan. First, I would like to say to Ms. Yoshi, thank you for everything that you do. Not only that, but happy birthday. But I would like to say something. This organization is very near and dear to my heart. I grew up in Kalamazoo. I grew up in an abusive household. And I know what it's like to go home and have to deal with an abusive parent. I know what it's like to cry at night and have to deal with an abusive parent and go to sleep with fear of not knowing what's going to happen throughout the night. So I think even though I had both parents in my home, even though I had to deal with a circumstance like that, I still had a parent who was a good parent in that regard. And both of my parents are great parents, but I still understand what it is to deal with something of that nature. But in the same sentence, we have children every single day in our community who either aren't eating, who are being abused in a lot of different ways. And this organization, and for everyone who is here and everyone who is watching here tonight, understand that we are a proactive organization. We are not here to be responsive. We are here to be ahead of whatever the issue may be, to try and nip it in the bud before it becomes a problem. And so before I even get into this proclamation, I just want to say thank you to the work that you do, Ms. Yoshi. I hope that you do not feel as though we don't appreciate everything that you do, because you have a heart for the job. And I think that's what's most important. I came aboard a little after you became the director of our organization, and you may have not known the ins and outs and everything about our organization when you began, but you had the heart for our organization. And I could tell that, and it was very noticeable. So thank you again for your work. And so let's get into the proclamation for Child Abuse Prevention Month, April 2018. Whereas child abuse is defined as a parent or caregiver, whether through action or failing to act, causes injury, death, emotional harm, or risk of serious harm to a child. There are many forms of child maltreatment, including neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, exploitation, and emotional abuse. And whereas on average, 13 new cases of child abuse and neglect are reported in Kalamazoo County every day. And whereas the Kalamazoo County Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Council works to educate our children on personal safety, parents on safe sleep practices, and professionals on recognizing and reporting signs of child abuse and neglect. And whereas the Kalamazoo County Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Council specializes in multiple programs, including Kids Are Special, KCAN Family Help Book, and mandated reporter training. And whereas the Kalamazoo Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Council recognizes the need to be proactive in prevention of child abuse, along with continuously building relationships throughout the county of Kalamazoo. Now, therefore, on behalf of the 52nd City Commission and our Honorable Bobby J. Hopewell in his absence, the City of Kalamazoo do hereby proclaim April as Child Abuse Prevention Month in the City of Kalamazoo, and call upon all citizens, community agencies, faith groups, medical facilities, and businesses to increase their participation in the effort to support families, thereby preventing child abuse and strengthening the community in which we live. Malfunction issues.
I'll speak up. Research tells us that a lot of societal problems have their roots in child abuse and neglect. And so if we can just get ahead of this problem and learn to nurture our children better, we can end up with a much better community, one that does not have as many physical and behavioral problems, as many poor outcomes in terms of graduation rates and low birth weights. We can get rid of all kinds of, I shouldn't say get rid of, we can really help reduce substance abuse problems. All sorts of physical diseases, thank you, Scott, including diabetes, obesity, cancer, these kinds of things that are such societal problems. Very little funding is put into prevention efforts, and so we just appreciate your support so much by helping us to spread the word about child abuse and neglect prevention. Thank you.
appears that I was the cause of the microphone failure. I apologize. We're on a roll and just getting started. Our second proclamation tonight is for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Commissioner Seitz will offer the proclamation. Are the representatives from the YWCA here?
All right. Sexual Assault Awareness Month, April 2018. Whereas, according to the 2016 Michigan Incident Crime Report data, there were 525 offenses in regards to rape and/or sexual assault in Kalamazoo County, and whereas, as reported in the 2016 United States Census Bureau, Kalamazoo County's population totals 261,654, with women comprising 51% of the total, and whereas every 98 seconds an American is sexually assaulted, and every 8 minutes that victim is a child. 1 out of every 6 women and 1 out of every 33 men have been the victim of an attempted or completed sexual assault in his or her lifetime, her, or their lifetime, and whereas, based on the above information, it is estimated that 22,240 females and 2,885 males who are victims and/or survivors of sexual assault reside in Kalamazoo County, and whereas in 2017, the YWCA of Kalamazoo provided sexual assault nurse examinations for 127 adults and 36 children. These numbers do not reflect the number of individuals in our community who require ongoing therapy, counseling, advocacy, and safe shelter, nor do they reflect the number of individuals who did not feel safe to come forward for examination. And whereas victims of sexual assault are 3 times more likely to suffer from depression, 6 times more likely to suffer from PTSD, and 4 times more likely to contemplate suicide. And whereas YWCA Kalamazoo is dedicated to supporting survivors of sexual assault as well as working to end sexual violence within our community. Now, therefore, on behalf of the 52nd City Commission and Bobby J. Hopewell, Mayor of the City of Kalamazoo, I, Shannon Sykes-Nearing, do hereby proclaim April 2018 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the City of Kalamazoo and applaud the efforts of the many victim service providers, police officers, prosecutors, national and community organizations, and private sector supporters for their efforts in promoting sexual assault awareness.
I just had something quick to say. On behalf of YWCA Kalamazoo and our sexual assault program, we want to thank you for your continued support in declaring April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We at YWCA Kalamazoo are doing the work to create safer environments for all and to end sexual violence, but we can't do it alone. Sexual violence is not just an individual issue, it is a community issue, and it takes a community to help change the climate. So whether that be teaching our children at a young age what respect is, teaching what healthy relationships really look like, modeling what they should look like, believing survivors, supporting survivors, writing laws that protect survivors and hold perpetrators accountable, we all have our own power in being able to prevent sexual violence. And we ask the community to look inside yourself and see what power you have and how you can use it for a safer community here. Thank you. We just wanted everyone to
Are there any changes? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to items on the consent agenda? Those items are in section F. Excuse me, if you would like to speak to those items, we need to move them to the regular agenda. Is there anybody that would like to move the consent agenda item to the regular agenda? All right. Deputy City Manager, are there any communications?
None, Vice Mayor.
Next, we are at item E, public hearings. Deputy City Manager.
First is a public hearing to receive comments on 2 zoning ordinance establishing regulations for medical marijuana facilities and uses, and the action will be separate motions to adopt each ordinance. The first motion is to adopt an ordinance to amend sections 4.1, 4.2, and 12.3 of the City of Kalamazoo zoning ordinance regarding the location of medical marijuana facilities. The second motion is to adopt an ordinance to amend section 4.3 of the City of Kalamazoo zoning ordinance addressing medical marijuana as a home occupation.
I would now like to open the public hearing to receive comments on the 2 zoning ordinances establishing regulations for medical marijuana facilities and uses. If you'd like to speak about these 2 zoning ordinances, please come to the podium, state your name, and whether you live in the city. You have 4 minutes for your comments.
Thank you, City Commission, for holding this meeting tonight. I am Devon Weinberg. I'm a Kalamazoo native, born and raised, and graduated from Weinberg High School in 1998. Care deeply about this city. I currently reside in Portage. I'm also the manager and part owner of Lake Effect, a provisioning center in Portage that has been operating now for a couple of years, and we have done a lot of work trying to educate the community on cannabis as medicine. I want to make a couple points to you guys tonight about these ordinances. The first is that these are first and foremost and will always be healthcare related ordinances, and I can't impress upon you the importance of cannabis as medicine and how important that is to people in this community. There's about 6,000 registered patients in Kalamazoo County. The vast majority of those are in the city limits of Kalamazoo. As you all know, there is no what I would call a dignified access point for tested medication in the city of Kalamazoo. Therefore, in my opinion, none of those residents have dignity when they're accessing medication for serious illnesses that they have, whether it be cancer, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease. I'm a cancer survivor myself. It's what led me towards cannabis as medicine. Throughout chemotherapy, I was given the best 21st century medicine has to offer for nausea and chronic pain. It didn't touch what cannabis did for me as a medicine standpoint. So I want to make very clear that the effectiveness of cannabis in regards to symptom management is the driver of it across the country, and it's the driver of it in the state of Michigan. It's why people vote for it, because it works for symptom management much better than a lot of prescription medication. A quick example of that, we have something called honey sticks at our store that are made. Caregivers we have are beekeepers. They make purely infused honey, about 25 milligrams in a child-proof container. People use a small portion of that honey in their tea or coffee in the morning to deal with chronic pain throughout the day. That is one of the go-to medications for hundreds of people in this community, some of them for cancer as well. Most of the time it's arthritis, chronic pain related, and many people have been able to drop things like tramadol, fentanyl, OxyContin, and Vicodin for medicated cannabis in that form. The medicine is real. The second thing I want to impress upon you is the ordinances themselves that Clyde and the zoning department have released in the city of Kalamazoo are very good ordinances. It's been a long road. Clyde's kept his eye on the ball for well over a year now. I definitely want to give a special thanks to Peter Eldridge and zoning. He's done a fantastic job, and also the city of Kalamazoo is lucky to have a large industrial area, large commercial areas that are away from any residence or church or library that may cause some of the uncertainty and some of the stereotypical things about cannabis comes up when they get close to those areas. You know, if we can, luckily Kalamazoo has a lot of space outside of those areas. That's where Clyde and zoning naturally saw fit for this industry to take root, and that's where it should take root. So I think you can be very confident in the ordinances in front of you, and these ordinances will at the very least provide the basic dignities to the patients in this city, in this community, of being able to access their medicine locally, a tested product that is free of contaminants, is dosed properly, is packaged properly with child-proof containers, and that they can feel safe about going to get that medicine rather than, trying to call a caregiver. That for the vast majority of patients, a caregiver is a unicorn that flies through the sky. It's somebody they're never going to meet face to face, and if they did, chances are they wouldn't have tested medication anyways. So I'm glad that the state of Michigan moved this law forward a couple years ago. I'm ecstatic that the city of Kalamazoo is moving this law forward right now. Again, thank you for all your time on this, and you can be very confident in passing this. Thank you.
Please hold your applause. Please hold your applause. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, council members, commissioners. My name is Eric Foster. I'm a resident of East Lansing, Michigan. I'm with Cannabis Practice Group. We are a Southfield, Michigan-based consulting company in the space, working with provisioning facilities and with grower operators in the southeastern Michigan area. It is definitely a good thing to see what the city is doing, because the western side of the state has been slow to look at, well, the whole state in general, but the western side has been slow to move in this dynamic. And when you have people who are receiving a healthcare product such as this, the opportunity to reduce the individuals going to the black market or untested facilities or providers is great. One of the things that we've looked at, and as we look at in all the areas where we've worked and will continue to work, is the economic value that comes from this industry as well. The average new facility that is started in the cannabis industry on the provisioning side usually creates an investment of anywhere from $700 to $2.2 million in the related cost of build out, equipment, materials, hiring personnel, and provisioning facilities usually employ anywhere from 10 to 20 individuals, all the way up to grow operations, which if it's a retrofitted building, usually can range from 1.5 to 4.5 million in investment with all the related cost, equipment, permitting fees, and the like. Or if it's a new construction from the ground up, can be anywhere from 3 million to 12 million in investment. So you have that as positive economic stimulus because it impacts property values of those areas. Another thing with some of the communities we're working with, they've looked at different add-ons to their ordinance to increase community benefits in regards to the aesthetic view of the buildings, the way that they're structured, the way that they're laid out, but then also additional community benefits that are tied into what those businesses will offer in regards to additional funding or additional support, which is allowable in the MMFLA. There's two sections, section 601 and 603, that creates room for local communities to assess additional fees and or requirements, if you will, that are not prohibited by state law. Additionally, though, when you think about your region, not just this county, but if you look at yourself in a cluster region of the 8 counties, you have anywhere from 20,000 to 35,000 potential persons who are licensed to receive and get medical marijuana products. Now, new data from the New Frontier company that analyzes this, the average person getting medical cannabis spends roughly $402 to $412 per month on their products. So the market size here in the 8 counties around, well, 7 counties around Kalamazoo County is anywhere from 69.9 to 123.5 million. Just in your county, it's anywhere from 17.7 to 30.7 million. So you have a unique opportunity through this to add a new burgeoning industry in the healthcare and pharmaceutical arena that can be a value add to the community, and value add to your residents in need of health care such as this and for employment.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nehemiah Scudder, and I think you all know me. I'd like to speak in favor of this ordinance because personally I don't use marijuana, but I have many friends who do, and it seems to be relatively harmless when used on a small scale. As I understand it, the city police, to the best of my knowledge, no longer enforce the current marijuana laws on the books, so that people can use it, whether it's for medical purposes or just tripping, as they call it. But, well, that could be dangerous if it became widespread in our community. People would cop out, maybe stop working and engage less in politics. But anyway, I think it should be legalized, and making medical marijuana fully available is a step in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
All right. Hey, what's up, guys? Chris Wimhoff, 1407 Bryant Street. I think it's probably no secret to anybody. I'm going to be in support of us opening this up. And I'd really encourage Kalamazoo to look at being a state leader, looking at making career incubation, and really looking at what the things we've been looking at for zoning for mixed lot use and opening up for regular people. I can tell you as a card holder, for me to get something that I can afford, even here, even with Lakeshore, I've had to drive to Detroit, and then I had to drive to Lansing. And next week, I'm going to have to guess where I'm going to find medication that I'm legally allowed to have because that got shut down. When I was going to the one in Detroit, every day they were opening it, and this was on Sundays when I went, there were 350 people just in the time I were there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday. 400, I've seen people drop 500 at a time. I'm sure a couple of those people are recreational. I had somebody, I lost to opioid addiction, and the only time that they were successfully not hooked on opiates that they got from prescription drugs was when they were on marijuana. You can look at that and you look at the use of CBDs for the health impacts alone and what it allows for the community. And then you look at people in my position where we're still driving halfway across the state because it's the only way we can get to where our fingers don't twitch. Not for nerves, just to clarify, the fingers twitching there. Thought about that. The last thing I just kind of say with that is there's some really good examples if you want to blow me off for best practice kind of examples. If you look at the state of Nevada, somebody who is blatantly against marijuana, they allowed it, they opened up the doors, and within 3 months the entire state was calling for state of emergency because of the amount of tax money they were losing. And that was an opponent against it. If you look at that, if you look at the property values in Lansing for the small window that they were allowing places to move in Lansing, in one neighborhood, please reach out to the leaders. In one neighborhood, in 48 hours, property values soared 500%. 500%. Think about the generational poverty and the access that we talk about. If we use the mixed use, if we don't close this off to just a certain part of the community and we allow career incubation, we allow these kids that are already into this to flourish into it and make an actual career out of it, you have a whole bunch of opportunities. I know in Edison, if you put it there, the kids they would be into this. There would be businesses. There's an opportunity. I see with passing the ordinance, don't stop there. Be a leader. We're talking about legalizing this next year. That's going to be on the ballot. And all over the state, there's a majority for it. Kalamazoo has an opportunity to not just allow it, we have an opportunity to corner the market before it floods Michigan. If we're going to get the money for the Foundation for Excellence, if we need $500 million, you want to raise the residents, You want to raise the property values. You want to raise local business. You want to end generational poverty. There are several states around the country that wish they could be in our opportunity for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Devon Loker, down in Portage. I just wanted to thank you all for the time and effort that you've put into this ordinance. I know it's a lot of work. We would like to have some further considerations as we go forward when the sky doesn't fall about relinquishing some of these setbacks. There's a number of large companies that hold a lot of the leasing spaces that would be viable. So it really doesn't open up the industry quite like some of the entrepreneurs in the community would like to see fit. So, but I appreciate all your support in getting it this far. So, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Alison Park, and I live in Kalamazoo Township. So I just want to thank the city so much for the efforts that you guys have taken in putting these ordinances together. I think that there have been a lot of important changes that have been made since this first started last summer. And as a potential operator, I know my team and I are very grateful for the considerations that you've made. I just have one comment, question that hopefully you can provide some clarification on. It looks like in the most recent draft of the zoning ordinance, there was a provision requiring a 1,000-foot separation distance between facilities. So my question is, how does the city intend to prioritize applicants who are applying for sites within 1,000 feet from each other? Is that first come, first serve? Is it during the 21-day submission window? What is the city's plans for determining who gets first right to those sites? That's it, and thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Helm, and I happen to be a registered nurse at Borges Medical Center working in the ICU. I'm also a Michigan Nurse Association board member at the state level. And we recently, at the state level, have endorsed the legalization of medical marijuana. We feel, and with all our research, that it has shown great benefit in the cancer population, dialysis, chronically ill people, palliative care people that can't take the opioids. I personally can speak on two family members, one that unfortunately is deceased at the age of 14, that used it occasionally because the pain was intractable and she was allergic to a lot of the pain medication. I have a 40-year-old nephew right now who smokes it occasionally because he's allergic to the nitroglycerin that he's supposed to be able to take for his chest pains. You know, when the defibrillator comes on or when he tries to work the job too much and gets chest pain, that's about the only thing that does relieve the pain. Does he do it daily? No. He says only when it gets too bad. Then a few tokes, the pain goes away and he can relax. So I applaud the Kalamazoo commissioners on these ordinances, and I see great benefit moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Omar Forney from Troy, Michigan, in Oakland County. I want to echo the comments from previous speakers on the amount of effort, and just want to thank the commission and the attorney and planning on the efforts thus far. I really just have a housekeeping item specifically on the change to 1,000 feet. Understand the intent was to kind of reduce the saturation or limit the saturation of provisioning centers in certain parts of the city, which I understand. That said, I just noticed that that language references 1,000 feet between medical marijuana facilities, which would then include secure transport or safety compliance facilities, which there's a slight discrepancy because in the above version for secure transport and safety compliance, it mentions 500 feet. So I think it just might be a clarification item that might need to be addressed, because it will have impact. I understand the initial intent was to limit 1,000 feet between provisioning centers, which is fine, but I think just that language needs to be looked at to make sure it references provisioning centers. So thanks everybody for their time.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello. So this was kind of a last-minute plan to come into this meeting. I don't have anything prepared, but as sitting in here and listening to people, I needed to come up here and address you. So thank you for all that you're doing to get these motions approved.
Excuse me, can you state your name?
My name's Kate Freeman.
Do you live in the city?
I live in Kalamazoo.
Thank you.
I came to Kalamazoo back in '96 for college. I did 4 years at Western, and then I went back to the east side of the state. Worked in a lot of different areas of healthcare as a nurse, and I recently came back to Kalamazoo 3 years ago to take a job in healthcare again and to be close to my sister, who also is in Kalamazoo and in healthcare. As she was starting a family and getting married, having children, I wanted to be close, and I thought that West Michigan is a place for me to lay down roots. 6 months after moving back to Kalamazoo, I became very ill with Crohn's disease. Nobody in my family has Crohn's disease. I went from being a full-time professional, very independent, living on my own, taking care of myself, to being on disability at 37 years old. Medical marijuana has played a huge role in me standing here before you. I don't look sick. I am recovered after my 9th surgery in January. It was a success. Medical marijuana got me there. I lost 40 pounds when I was diagnosed with Crohn's. Medical marijuana got me food. It allowed me to eat. I'm sorry for the emotion, but it's emotional. Now that I am healing, my disease is in remission, medical marijuana is still a daily part of my life. It helps me eat 3 meals a day. I am now moving to try to be a positive part of this community and work in this arena with a very qualified group of people who are strong in business, who are strong in healthcare, who are strong in compassion. When I got my license for medical marijuana, I happened to fall into the lap of a caregiver, of a set of caregivers in this town like no other. They drive the product to my house when I can't move. It's a little too much information, but all my surgeries were rectal surgeries, so I couldn't sit, I couldn't drive. I had a hard time using the restroom. They came to me anytime I needed them, they were there. And they made it affordable for me. Living on disability is impossible. I've lived off my family and the support of my boyfriend and the support of the people around me. Those people include my caregivers. Now the law is making it impossible for them to make a living as caregivers, to sell their product to dispensaries. They have to have 1,500 plants. That's impossible for somebody who puts this much time and compassion into what they do for their community, like my caregivers, who are here with me tonight. I really hope that things pass. I hope that we can find things to smooth this whole process out for everybody, because I think that this is a huge opportunity for marijuana to lose some of its stigma and for us as a community to make some money. Okay, we have education problems, we have abuse problems, we have neglect problems in our community. Put some of that money that we can make with cannabis towards those problems. But more importantly, people in this community need this drug. I'm standing here in front of you, back to the weight that I was before I was diagnosed with Crohn's, and I'm fistula-free. My Crohn's is in remission. Cannabis got me there. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Kyle Barker, I live in Kalamazoo Township. It sounds like we got a lot of support in the room for these ordinances, and I appreciate that. I appreciate all the speakers and you guys' time and consideration in this. I do ask that you keep this fluid, though, as a work in progress, that what you pass tonight hopefully is not rigid. Work on it over time as we see things develop, as we see the state develop into this industry. Work on that ordinance. I think I heard somebody speak on behalf of shrinking the buffer zones down. I think that's a phenomenal idea, and it creates a lot more opportunity for businesses and business owners a lot wider diversity, not just the few rich individuals who own the maybe 5 or 6 locations that are available. So shrink those buffers down and you'll have a wider selection of candidates as operators. So keep it fluid. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Bradley Gately. I'm a Grand Rapids resident from Portage originally. I'm here on behalf of Meyer C. Weiner Company. I just wanted to bring up 2 points for clarification possibly in the zoning ordinance. First being, will there be any provisions in the language about locations of facilities outside of Kalamazoo city limits, specifically in regards to like Portage, with them adopting their new ordinance? Second, it says for growing facilities, you guys do not allow for more than 1 license to hold. Does that apply for stacking of C-class licenses? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the commission on these 2 ordinances? I will now close the public hearing. Commissioners, the recommended action is for separate motions to adopt each ordinance. Is there a motion to adopt an ordinance to amend sections 4.1, 4.2, and 12.3 of the City of Kalamazoo zoning ordinance regarding the location of a medical marijuana facility?
I move that.
Is there a second?
Support.
The motion was made by Commissioner Urban and supported by Commissioner Cooney. Is there any discussion?
Commissioners, you have before you a change. It's sometimes you work on something and you get the forest doesn't see, you don't see the forest for the trees, and this is all on me, it's my fault. It's a clarification. A couple of the speakers have already spoken to it, and this is as a result of the outcome of the workshop that was held at the end of February with the commission, and it was suggested that we go to a soft type of cap, and the idea was to space out the provisioning centers at least 1,000 feet from one another. And so I kind of worked that language in, and I forgot to also say 500 feet from any other types of facilities. So that clarification is before you this evening, and even when I was typing it, I forgot to insert the word feet after the number 1,000. So I would suggest that, and this is a Scrivener's mistake, it is not, I don't think, a significant material change. It clearly is an attempt to clarify what is, because it was, language was omitted, it was not as clear as it should have been otherwise. So what I'm suggesting is that at page 2 of this ordinance that you're considering, under the applicable standards for provisioning centers, it would be a separation distance of 1,000 feet from other provisioning centers and 500 feet from any other licensed medical marijuana facilities. So that's the clarification, and I would suggest that you may want to amend the motion to reflect this additional language.
Commissioner Anderson.
While our attorney's got the floor here, any comments and any of the other questions that came up? I don't know if you noted those, stacked licenses.
I think I'll kind of go through them.
Okay.
In regard to the stacked licenses, the state has said you may stack Class C licenses, and because the state has said that you are permitted to do that, we can't prohibit it. So as a result, you can stack Class C licenses. Class A and B are not stackable under state law. So we do permit that. The other question was whether this is going to be a living ordinance. I think we are, even though Kalamazoo Township and the City of Portage have already adopted their ordinances, Kalamazoo really was ahead of the curve. Even though we may be the last one to adopt these ordinances, we were out in front, and our ordinances have been available on our website since last summer. And so it's been reviewed by a lot of folks. We've received, at least my office, and so is planning, a lot of input in terms of why are you doing it this way? I want some clarification. So we've heard that and tried to incorporate it. In regard to the question in terms of how is it going to work in terms of people getting their licenses, and again, this is more to the license that you'll consider later this evening, which is the actual regulatory license. This isn't the zoning one, but I'll answer it now because everybody's thinking about it. The ordinance provides, and I want to make sure everybody's clear on this, that if it's adopted this evening, it really falls to the city clerk to kind of oversee the administrative process. And because that is what I anticipate to be a rather large influx of work for his office, the ordinance, if adopted, would take effect under the charter within 10 days, so April 12th. Under the terms of the ordinance, the city clerk has the next 35 days to announce when the window will be open for taking applications. So he doesn't have to start taking them April 3rd, tomorrow, if it's adopted. He doesn't have to start taking them April 13th, the day after it becomes effective. He has that window to announce when his office will be open for taking those applications. That was done because it was anticipated this ordinance was going to be adopted. There's going to have to be some administrative work behind the scenes, and he's got an election to run come May 8th. And so he's busy with absentee voters right now. In fact, one of his staff members was working overtime this evening, working on that very thing. So his office is busy. He doesn't need an influx of applications for medical marijuana licenses while he's trying to run an election. So I fully anticipate, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Borling, that he's not going to make an announcement until after May 8th as to when his office will open for taking applications. And then he's got a state, it'll be at least a 21-day window. It could be longer, but it has to be at least a 21-day window for him to take applications. So that's the way that process will work. Now, as to if people are applying and they're going to have two facilities that are within the separation distances, that is going to really be dictated by the state, because we are going to issue a provisional certificate. That means you've met our requirements, at least on the face of it, and state, you decide whether this individual is going to get a license or not. If two people are vying for licenses and they're within, for instance, provisioning centers are within 1,000 feet of each other, whoever the state picks first is the one that's going to get it. The other one is, because they've only got a provisional permission, and if the state says this is the one that's getting the license, then that creates the 1,000-foot zone, if you will. So that's how that will be handled. In regard to our neighbors, our other communities, we in January had a meeting with representatives of the city of Portage and the Kalamazoo Township, and at least at that point, it was suggested that there be a 250-foot boundary around all of our jurisdictional lines to create, if you will, a buffer zone. The city of Portage did not want to do that, and that's fine, that's their choice, but Kalamazoo Township did. And after I talked with Township Manager Mitchell on several occasions, and so we massaged some of that, but we do have a 250-foot boundary with where we share a boundary line with Kalamazoo Township, except where we have zones that would each permit medical marijuana facilities. So if they have an industrial zone and we have an industrial zone on each side of it, that 250-foot boundary doesn't apply in that particular circumstance. The other thing with both those jurisdictions and with the other communities that we share a boundary with, which would be Comstock, Ashtemo, Parchment, and Cooper, if there is a protected use, like a school or a church, and it lies on the other jurisdiction's side of the line, that is a protected use, and you still have to meet our separation distances, even though that protected use is not in the city per se. So I think that answers all of the questions that I believe were raised.
Commissioner Anderson.
Great job. I think it does. I've got just a little follow-up on what you were talking about as far as distance. I was under the impression, and correct me if I'm wrong in the city attorney, is that the city of Portage was going to honor a distance from provisioning center to provisioning center across jurisdiction boundaries. Is that inaccurate in your estimation?
I haven't looked at the most recent version of the City of Portage ordinance, so I don't know. Okay, I can't answer that question.
Other discussion?
So we need to amend?
I'm asking you to make this change that is reflected on the document I handed out to you before the meeting. Again, I don't think that requires us to delay action on this. It is a clarifying amendment. It is not a substantive change. It merely clarifies what the intent was all along. So I believe you can adopt the amendatory language and adopt the ordinance tonight.
Check. State the amended motion and do it all at once. What's your pleasure?
My recommendation is that somebody move to accept the amendatory language proposed by the city attorney as clarifying the separation distances for provisioning centers.
For my clarification, would that be Commissioner Urban because he motioned for the original?
You don't need that. Somebody can just make that motion, somebody else can second it, and that. Then you vote on the amendment.
All right.
So
Is there somebody that wants to support the amendment?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Sykes. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Is there any more discussion?
So now I'll help you through
thank you.
The parliamentary fashion.
Let's do this.
Right now, there's a motion to amend the ordinance as proposed. Now you have to vote on the proposed amendment.
All right. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban. Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Now the motion before the body is the ordinance as amended.
Okay, and are we back to discussion?
Yes.
All right, Commissioners, we're still at discussion. Are there any final comments, questions for the city attorney? Seeing none, we are now going to vote on the amended ordinance. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
The motion passes. Is there a motion to adopt the ordinance to amend Section 4.3 of the City of Kalamazoo zoning ordinance addressing medical marijuana as a home occupation?
So moved.
Support.
The motion was made by Commissioner Sykes and supported by Commissioner Cooney. Is there any discussion? City Attorney.
Again, just to address this, even though the First Amendment that you approved was zoning for basically commercial facilities, the home occupation caregiver model that was in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, adopted by voters in 2008, this ordinance addresses that. There was some clarification in that law, and the ordinance merely brings our ordinance up to date. The key thing is two things. It permits caregivers to engage in providing edible types of medical marijuana, and it also prohibits them from engaging in butane extraction in a residential area due to the explosive nature of butane and other refinery volatile gases that are used in extracting the oil out of the plant. It can be, if you don't know what you're doing, it can be dangerous because of the flash point of propane and butane and the like. And so that is, under state law, that's prohibited in residential dwellings and residential zones. And so that ordinance reflects those two changes.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next is the consent agenda. Deputy City Manager.
Vice Mayor, we have 14 items on the consent agenda for your consideration tonight, and the action would be a motion to approve items 1 through 14 and authorize the city managers to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Item number 1 is the approval of the purchase of a 900 ECO truck-mounted combination sewer cleaner from Frederickson Supply LLC in the amount of $403,227.87. Item number 2 is the approval of a contract with Rathco Safety and Supply, Inc. for sign installation, maintenance, and removals in the amount of $234,475. Item number 3 is the approval of a contract with Whiteman and Associates, Inc. for professional engineering services related to improvements to Court Street between Portage Street and Sprinkle Road in the amount of $216,600. Item number 4 is the approval of the purchase of a Doosan front-end loader from Carrollton Equipment Company in the amount of $237,938.42. Item number 5 is the approval of a contract with Hoffman Brothers, Inc. for the Rose Street Improvement Project in the amount of $1,301,593. Item number 6 is the approval of a contract with Cripps Fontaine Excavating, Inc. for Davis Street Park Improvements, Phase 2, in the amount of $115,000, and approval of an additional $42,000 of bond reserves for the project. Item number 7, adoption of a resolution approving the Second Amendment to the City of Kalamazoo's revised Brownfield Plan, implemented and recommended for approval by the City of Kalamazoo Brownfield Redevelopment Authority following a public hearing before the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. Item number 8 is the adoption of a resolution recognizing Outfront Kalamazoo as a nonprofit organization operating in the community for the purposes of obtaining a charitable gaming license. Adoption of item number 9 is adoption of a resolution recognizing Animal Rescue Project as a nonprofit organization operating in the community for the purpose of obtaining a charitable gaming license. Item 10, schedule a public hearing for May 7, 2018 to receive comments on a proposed neighborhood enterprise zone for the Southeast Gateway area. Item number 11 is the approval of the 2018 Regional Tactical Team Response Plan Memorandum of Understanding. Item number 12 is approval of the 2018 Region 5 Bond Response Plan Memorandum of Understanding. Item number 13 is approval of the mayor's appointment to the following boards and commissions. The appointment of Ryan Weaver to the Downtown Development Authority Board for a term expiring on April 1st, 2022. The approval of an extension of Robert Miller's term on the Downtown Development Authority for 2 years, expiring on April 1st, 2020. And the appointment of Jack Bartman to the Planning Commission for a term expiring on March 31st, 2019. And item number 14 is approval of the minutes from the City Commission meetings on February 27th and March 5th, 2018.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioners, I just had a correction that I need to ask be approved along with the minutes, namely the March 5th minutes on page 49. It's the vote on the fountain issue. I failed to register Commissioner Urban's no vote, and that's a substantive issue, not just a typo to be glossed over. And so I'm asking that in the motion on the consent agenda, that the motion to approve the March 5th minutes include that correction.
Thank you, Clerk Borling. Do we have to do anything, or are we good?
I think that I think you can take it as the chair can say that it's understood that the motion, the minutes will reflect the correction upon approval.
Okay. What the city attorney just said. We're going to take action on the consent agenda with the understanding that if we approve the consent agenda, it's with the corrected minutes for March 5th, which includes Commissioner Urban's no vote. So the requested action, Commissioners, is to approve items 1 through 14 on the consent agenda and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Sykes, supported by Commissioner Urban. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Items on the consent agenda have been approved. Next items are on the regular agenda. Deputy City Manager.
Vice Mayor, on the regular agenda, we have 5 items. Item number 1 is the adoption of an ordinance to amend the pension ordinance to institute a deferred retirement option program. Motion is to adopt the ordinance.
Thank you. Are there any citizens who would like to comment on this item? If so, please come to the podium, state your name and whether or not you live in the city. You have 4 minutes for comments. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the recommended action is to adopt the ordinance. There's a typo in my script. The motion is to adopt to adopt the pension ordinance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Cooney, supported by Commissioner Anderson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
The motion passes. Item G2, Deputy City Manager.
Item G2 is the adoption of an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of wastewater supply system revenue bonds, Series 2018, in an amount not to exceed $6.2 million and an adoption of a notice of sale resolution. Motion to adopt the ordinance and resolution.
Thank you. Are there any citizens who would like to comment on this item? If so, please come to the podium, state your name and whether or not you live in the city. You have 4 minutes for your comments. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the recommended action is to adopt the ordinance and resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
Motion is moved by Commissioner Anderson, supported by Commissioner Cooney. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes. The motion passes. Item G3, Deputy City Manager.
Item G3 is the adoption of an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of water supply system revenue bonds, Series 2018, in the amount not to exceed $9.8 million, and the adoption of a notice of sale resolution. The action is motion to adopt the ordinance and resolution.
Thank you. Are there any citizens in the audience who'd like to comment on this item? Again, if you'd like to come to the podium, state your name and whether or not you live in the city. You have 4 minutes. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the recommended action is to adopt the ordinance and resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion moved by Commissioner Cooney, seconded by Commissioner Urban. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham. Yes. Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes. The motion passes. Item G4, Deputy City Manager.
Item G4 is the adoption of a resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation limited tax bonds in an amount not to exceed $8.3 million for the purpose of financing FY 2018 capital projects. Action is the motion to adopt the resolution.
Thank you. Are there any citizens, that would like to comment on this item? If so, please come to the podium, state your name and whether or not you live in the city. You have 4 minutes. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the recommended action is to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
Motion moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Cunningham, supported by Commissioner Anderson. Is there any discussion? Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
The motion passes. Item G5, Deputy City Manager.
Item G5 is the adoption of an ordinance to amend Chapter 20B Medical Marijuana Facilities of the City of Kalamazoo Code of Ordinance. Action, motion to adopt the ordinance.
Thank you. Are there any citizens who would like to comment on this item? If so, please come to the podium, state your name and whether or not you live in the city. You have 4 minutes. Good evening.
I'm Nehemiah Scudder. I live at 345 North Burdick, which is usually called the Rickman House. I'm in room 303 there. And I'd like to point out that We don't yet know the long-range results of what we're doing tonight in regard to marijuana. It may turn out to be a fairly harmless thing, or it may not. When I was in the West, in Oregon, I ran across 2 different individuals at different times who'd been heavy users of marijuana for decades. These were not just casual users, they were heavy users for a long period of time. These people didn't want to work. They didn't want to engage in politics to make the world better. They just wanted to kick back, smoke their joint, and let the world go by. Well, that scared me. So I decided not to use marijuana, whether medical or otherwise, and I haven't for quite a few years now. But if it becomes popular, and large numbers of people start dropping out, tune in, turn on, drop out, as they used to say, well, it could be disastrous for our civilization. So what I'd like to urge is that you, in passing this ordinance, keep in mind that we may need to reverse it at some future time. And reversing it may be a whole lot harder than passing it in the first place. Maybe some of you will be commissioners then, I don't know. Maybe you'll be dead by then if it takes 20 years before the obvious results show up. But I'd like to say that you should keep in mind that we may someday need to reverse this. One of the speakers earlier said he wanted fluidity in the commissioner's approach to this problem. And maybe flexibility would be a good word too. So that if it turns out to be a severe problem, more so than tobacco, more so than alcohol, and so the illegal drugs, well, hopefully we could then try to backtrack and reverse ourselves. We may not need to, but let's keep in mind that we might need to. We'll keep a watch out. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other citizens wishing to address this item? Seeing no one, Commissioners, the recommended action is to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Anderson, supported by Commissioner Cooney. Is there any discussion? Yes.
Commissioners, and I want to point out, and I think I know how you're going to handle this matter, but the ordinance for the zoning and the ordinance for, this is the police powers, they are tie-barred. You need to adopt both of them for either one of them to be effective. The action that you took earlier this evening requires this ordinance also to be passed in order for that one to become effective. The other thing that I want to point out, and this is in response to Mr. Hester's observations, medical marijuana is in a gray zone. Even though the state permits it, it still is unlawful unless you are a registered caregiver or registered patient to possess it. Those are the only individuals under Michigan law who may lawfully possess it, and there's restrictions as to how much they may have and under what circumstances they may use it. Everybody else, it is an unlawful substance under Michigan law. It is, even medical marijuana is not lawful at federal law. However, there is and I mentioned it in the program that I provided at the end of February, there is a continuing resolution that has been appended to various appropriation bills in Congress that basically tells the executive branch you may not enforce you may not enforce the federal marijuana laws against states where medical marijuana is legal. But that's a continuing resolution. It is, once a resolution for appropriations nears its end, Congress has to continue to adopt that continuing resolution. So, and at this point, Attorney General Sessions has taken a dim view on medical marijuana, but his ability to do anything in Michigan is stopped by the act of Congress. Now that is, and I will say this, that support is bipartisan in Congress for that continuing resolution. But on the other hand, has to be a known, has to be acknowledged that this is, marijuana remains an offense at federal and state law, except for approximately 3% of Michigan's population.
Thank you, City Attorney. Is there any other Comments by the commissioners? Any more discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
The motion passes. Next are reports and legislation. Deputy City Manager, do you have a report?
None, Vice Mayor.
City Clerk, do you have a report?
Not tonight.
Mr. City Attorney?
No, Mayor, Vice Mayor.
Next is an opportunity for citizen comments. Anyone wishing to address the commission on any topic should come forward to the podium. Please give your name and whether or not you live in the city. You have 4 minutes to make your comments.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Moore. I am a proud resident of the north side of Kalamazoo within the city. I came purposely tonight to wish my friend a happy belated birthday. Commissioner Cooney, definitely wish you all the best in love. I also wanted to talk to you very briefly about some work that Mothers of Hope is doing in the city of Kalamazoo. Commissioner Cooney serves on the board of Mothers of Hope, and a couple of months ago, they acquired a property. The treasurer, county treasurer, donated a house, a home over on Ada Street, 603 Ada Street in Kalamazoo. And our goal is not to just rent to folks, but we really have reached out to our family courts. We're looking to partner with them to identify a family that's going through the reunification process so that we can house this family and surround them with the supportive services that they need to support their journey to recovery, to make sure that the kids are growing and having a safe and healthy and healing environment so that they can live and grow and be promise ready. And so in order to do that, we understood that we just could not focus at 603. So our board president, Gwen Lanier, has been knocking on doors, really organizing the residents. And so we've taken up a focus on Ada, Simpson, Florence Lawrence, Woodbury, and Burrell Street. And since this process has started about 8 weeks ago, we've held 5 neighborhood meetings with the residents on those specific streets to talk about what their needs are in terms of how they envision their home having improvements, as well as what they see for the overall community. At our last meeting last week, city officials came and met with us, Mayor Hopewell, your planning department, came to talk to the residents about what we need. Also, county folks, our county treasurer were there, and we've had conversations with a lot of folks. I wanted to come tonight just to tell you, one, thank you for the staff being there, but also to let you know that even though we're having conversation about needs, I want to be really clear with you about the real needs of this community. There are a couple of burned down houses there that need to be removed. The property owners do not have the resources to do that, and so we're really reaching out to the city to help us be able to remove that blight and help us to clean up that neighborhood for safety reasons, for health reasons, and there's some properties that are in the houses, the apartment condos as they're listed on the tax rolls, that are empty. The owner is not caring for them, and there's homeless folks that are in and out, drug use, activity. There's all kind of squatting and stuff going on. And although the city has done some boarding up, that quick fix is not going to sustain us long-term going forward. God forbid a fire or anything to happen in one of those units, it will definitely impact the owner-occupied units next to it and probably will cause more than 15 families to be displaced. So that's the sense of urgency for me to come and ask Commissioner Anderson for some support, some really impactful support from the city of Kalamazoo to help these residents deal with this blight, to eliminate those houses that are just not rehabable, and help our residents in that area to be successful. I want to thank you for your work, for serving all of us. You all look amazing. Not as good as the county, but y'all there. No. But definitely want to thank you for all the work that you've done, and to Manager Ritzma, who's been in communication with us and helping us to address these issues. With that, have a good night.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Good evening.
Good. Same name, same address. I'd like to first thank Commissioner Sykes and a couple people finally on April 12th got a vote for the ducks for the zoning. And followed by that, I need to take back that I said I had overwhelming support. And I look you all in my eye and say that's absolutely what I had believed at the time, and I was very wrong once the news did a story on it. So instead of trying to ask for your support for it directly, I've spoke with some of the people who have concerns, and I'm setting up a meeting on April 7th, hopefully at the Edison Neighborhood Association, but if not, somewhere in Edison, and meeting with those concerned citizens. Going to try to do it like an open townhouse and just have people raise their hands and not try to hide from any questions. And hopefully I can show we put enough work in for them. So I always ask for integrity from you guys, so I felt like I was giving you smoke, and I wanted to correct that first, and then of course give you those flyers, show you that. Two, just in case you guys do get written, because it said they were going to write you. I do want to clarify for the smell, we're putting a cap limit at 10 foot per bird. And if you look at this space, this is very different from my house. This is a very different property. It's 3 acres. It's what we've always been trying to do for the birds. With this space, there will be 10 foot per bird as a cap. We're also working with some of the composters at K College who want our bird poop. So when we get collections of bird poop, we're actually going to be taking the bird poop across town and letting K College students play with it, because it sounds fun for them. We're going to try to do that. And then if you look there, we really want to try to do some innovative stuff. I'm closing with some former K College students who are helping me write a grant with the EPA. If we get that, I will be able to employ 1 to 4 students with over 2,000 employable hours, be able to give them benefits. And the goal is with these kids in the neighborhood, the ones that will likely be there are going to be ones who aren't going to be promise eligible anymore. And this is an opportunity to teach them gardening, low resource gardening like microgreens. And what that means is that they don't have to go find a farm somewhere to start a business. That means that they can get a vacant house, and with a 9x12 room and basic electricity, they can make an urban business, or show them any of the thousands of things that people along the way have kind of shown me. And then of course to just recycle some garbage and let some kids play with ducks. So don't want to take too much more time. I know I've been asking you guys about this. Finally got a vote, and then just wanted to correct. So maybe before the vote, if you're not sure, please get a hold of me. I want any questions to answer so I can be as transparent with everybody as possible so that everybody feels good about this. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the commission? At this time, we'll hear from commissioners wishing to make comments.
When I had my opportunity to address the commission, I'm sorry, I've neglected an opportunity. I would be remiss, given that we've adopted 2 or 3 marijuana ordinances. This was the work that was about a year in the making, and I wanted to call out a couple of people. We put together an internal group, in particular, City Clerk Borling and Pete Eldridge of the Community Planning Development Department, who were both in the chambers tonight, were of immense help to me. And so I wanted to express my appreciation to both of them and to let you as commissioners know that this was a group effort. And so even though I may have been the point person, I couldn't have done it without, in particular, the support of those 2 other staff persons. I wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're at commissioner comments. Any commissioner wishing to make a comment tonight, now's your time. We'll start with Commissioner Sykes.
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor Knott. Make this really brief. Thanks for all the comments tonight. I'm particularly excited about this work with Mothers of Hope, and look forward to seeing you, Chair Moore, and that organization continue to do some good work around the community, so I appreciate you coming out. Just a couple of things. I wanted to wish our mayor, who is not here with us, a happy birthday, so I'm going to do that anyway. And I didn't know, so belated happy birthday to Commissioner Cooney. Just one other thing I want to note, we have a Nobel Peace Laureate visiting our community on April 13th for a public talk, and there are going to be a number of different events happening throughout the week next week, starting with April 9th, and so I just want to put that on folks' radar. If you want more information, check out Great Lakes Peace Jam, because they are the ones putting on all of those events. I know that on Monday we'll have a Women of Color in Leadership in Politics and Business panel, and then I believe there is also a Women of Color in Politics specific conversation, and then the public talk. So look for that. Great Lakes Peace Jam does a lot of work with local youth in our community, from kindergarten all the way up through college, but they're also the affiliate for a 4-state region. So they do that work here, all across Michigan, in Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And I was at one time very, very blessed to be a part of that work. And I think we should continue to go out and support them and hear from some folks in the community, hear from our Nobel Peace Laureate, and welcome our youth on in Saturday morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I want to ask a question. I'm hoping, I don't want to catch people off guard here, but that there might be able to be a staff response. I know there's a recent emerging issue about garbage, trash that's being dumped in an empty lot on east side, and I know there was been public concern about that. I know that there were a couple dumpsters that had been sitting in that lot to collect flood damaged items, but those dumpsters are gone and people are just dumping stuff in the lot now. So I just wonder, is there some sort of update about how we're going to respond to that at this point?
Ask Director Baker to come forward and update us on that issue.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager. Commissioner Anderson's correct. We became aware late this evening, about 5 o'clock, it might have been after business hours, that there was dumping going on there. It appears that there's, still a significant outstanding need in the neighborhood. We're going to respond to that tomorrow morning with crews, with front-end loaders and dumpsters. We're going to get that all cleaned up. We'll continue to monitor the area and see if we need to extend the dumpsters or, look further into that. But first and foremost, we're on it. We'll get it cleaned up. It should be cleaned up totally by end of business tomorrow. And, we'll continue to see what the needs of the community are from there. Thank you.
Commissioner Cooney.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just want to point out that tomorrow is the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's last speech. He died. He was murdered the next day on April the 4th. And there are a number of observances of that. There's going to be an event tomorrow night at the Transformation Center out at Nazareth to read the speech and to look at it. But I just want to point out that so many times when people talk about Dr. King, it ends with his speech in Washington in 1963. But the last 5 years of his life, Dr. King was broadening his movement. He wasn't only talking about desegregation, he was talking about economic justice. He was speaking against the war in Vietnam and against militarism. And he was speaking against materialism and really the capitalist system in the United States. So all those issues are so much on the table tonight. But I just want to point out that Dr. King's last speech was a hopeful speech because it's called the mountaintop speech. He said, I've seen the promised land. So we got a long struggle ahead of us, but we have to remember what he did and make everything he fought for a reality.
Thank you. Commissioner Urban.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I want to turn this thing on. There we go. I wanted to give some comment about our recent decision to remove the ENLA statue and fountain and reflecting pools from Bronson Park. I feel I need to do some explaining. I think I could have been more effective in getting the commission and city staff to think more creatively about how to deal with the offense people took with the imagery of the statue. I was surprised by the lack of support that was ultimately shown for reaffirming the restoration plan that a previous city commission had endorsed. I began several months ago when the issue was raised again by saying that the negative interpretations of that statute are valid, but they are not the only valid interpretations. All interpretations are valid to those who hold them and to others who identify with those who hold them. The interpretations of the historians and the art historians are also valid, but they lack the emotional punch that the negative ones have. Here I miscalculated. I thought I could convince my colleagues that controversial public art could be edifying. Controversies are edifying if entered into in a spirit of inquiry. But I can't require that. No one can require that. We can ask for it, but it may not be forthcoming. I also misjudged the weight the commissioners would give to the fact that a previous commission had approved the Bronson Park restoration plan with the Illinois statue remaining and with the inclusion of an educational component about Kalamazoo once being an Indian reservation, and the fact that well over $2 million had already been raised or promised to the city for carrying out the restoration plan. Too late, I realized that the political situation nationally and locally had changed in the last 2 years, and that much additional creativity would need to take place if the statue were to be saved. That creativity did not develop. Not yet. So here we are. Not only the statue, but also the fountain and the reflecting pools are going away very soon, but at the end of May, I'm told. We have nothing positive to show for it that is on the path of healing. We have only the absence of a work of art that some, understandably, felt was offensive. We can do better than that. We must do better than that if we are truly to build a wholesome, sustainable community here. I propose that we discuss this item of what we are going to do now with regard to the park under new business at our next business meeting, and I ask that that item be put on the agenda. And I suggest the title be, for this discussion, Creating a Healing Ground in Bronson Park. I recognize, as someone wrote to me, and he reminded me, that healing must come from within. But I believe the city can do better in creating an environment for that to occur. I learned today that the foundations in Kalamazoo have been asked to weigh in on what should be done as a consequence of the decision to remove the fountain and all its parts. The city commission doesn't seem to have a role in that, and I want to correct that. I feel the city commission should have a major role in what happens with that park. We made the decision to change it, so now we own the consequences of it, and I want those consequences to be positive. That's the end.
Thank you. Commissioner Cunningham?
Just want to say that the mayor of our sister city, Numizoo, Japan, passed away recently, and we as a commission and as a city will be sending our regards and love.
Thank you. So I have a couple of items tonight. I have a bunch of notes to prepare myself, and they're all disjointed. That's just kind of how my day's been going. The first item, I apologize in advance if I get a little emotional, but you know, my pastor was here tonight, Reverend Dannison, and he talked about Sahida, who is being housed at my church right across the park at First Congregational Church. We've all seen the story. We all know her situation. And yesterday was Easter service at FCC, and we began our worship service by saying a prayer in unison for Sahida. And I learned that 16 congregations across Kalamazoo are saying the same prayer every Sunday in support of Sahida, and that number is growing. And at the conclusion of the service, after the brass quintet and the big pipe organ and all the music, we stood up and we're on to our Easter celebration with family and friends, and I saw Sahida in the back of the church. And instead of saying hello, I froze, staring at this woman that can't leave the four walls of the building across the park because our government has deemed her not wanted here anymore, right? If she leaves the church, she's going to be sent back to Pakistan, which is a country that she hasn't lived in since she was a teenager. She's broken no laws. She's paid her taxes on time. She has served this community well. And I just stared at her thinking about it's a gorgeous spring day and she can't go outside. Our church, my church rather, once a week, every couple of days, whenever the emails come in, are asking for people to come and to guard the door, to be there and to help staff monitor the door for suspicious people coming and going. And First Congregational Church across the park is not alone, right? There's a Central United Methodist Church right outside of Tiger Stadium that is also housing an undocumented immigrant family from Albania. Dozens of churches across and synagogues across the state of Michigan are declaring themselves sanctuaries for immigrants. They're standing up to the injustice imposed by our federal government. And now I know that our job as commissioners is to uphold the city's charter, and that there are those that would argue standing up for undocumented immigrants doesn't have a clear, defined line to upholding the charter. That's not for us to debate tonight. So I'm asking all of you as elected officials to flex that power that you have. When I was a healthcare organizer and activist and not on the city commission, I couldn't get a meeting with Fred Upton. I couldn't talk to Senators Stabenow and Peters. But as elected officials, we have access that our colleagues and constituents don't have. And I don't see our media friends here tonight, but I encourage the media to publish another story, to talk to, maybe they are there and I can't see with these bright lights, so I apologize. So to the media that's back there somewhere, I'm asking you to read another story. This isn't unique to Kalamazoo. It's not unique to Detroit. And I don't believe that this problem is going away. And I want you to ask elected officials in our area of the state, which side are you on? Are you on the side of injustice? Or are you on the side of families and communities and not separating people just because they are here undocumented? The second item I want to talk to you about is a situation that I've been made aware of at Borges Hospital. I'm calling just the Commission's attention to potentially a public health and safety concern for our entire community. I was contacted or a few nurses recently contacted me, no surprise, right? I've built my career the last 10 or so years working on health reform, and so they reached out to me and let me know that Borges, as you may or may not be aware, is owned by Ascension Health. And Ascension is looking to make some sweeping cuts in terms of staffing levels at many hospitals. And there's an impact potentially here at Borges. On March 5th, about 150 off-duty nurses and community members rallied outside of the hospital protesting proposed staffing cuts. And while there appears right now no nurses are going to be laid off, Borges RNs continue to advocate for the safety of Kalamazoo residents. There are positions that aren't being filled, potentially 60 to 70 positions that aren't being filled right now. So like the number of patients that a nurse is seeing has increased. There's opportunities for mistakes to be made when you have a huge caseload and you're tired and you're working multiple hours. So again, not something that we're directly involved in, but it's happening in our community. It is a safety concern. So I'm asking us to be aware of it. I'm asking the media to look into this potential story as well and to see what you can find out as it relates to the nursing changes and potential health and safety threat facing our community. With that, we are at item N, which is a request to go into closed session to discuss pending litigation. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved. Support.
Moved by Commissioner Sykes, supported by Commissioner Commissioner Cunningham. For anybody in the audience, I just want you to know that we will be coming back after closed session to take some action. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yeah.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Right.
neglect council. I sat right next to her, and so she told me about all the work we're doing.
Great.
hand out those things, or have you already handed it out?
We did. We got them, Jack.
Okay.
All right, I now call this meeting back to order. Commissioners, the recommended action is a motion, is a motion to accept the negotiable settlement of $810,000 in the case of the state versus the state of Dunnigan versus Officers Nugent and Schaefer. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Sykes, supported by Commissioner Urban. Is there any discussion? Clerk Boiling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
With that, we are adjourned. I thought my writing was bad.